So good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I would like to thank you all for joining us in this important event that takes place days before the 55th session of the Human Rights Council. My name is Jenny Jansson-Peers. I'm the Deputy Director of Right Livelihood. I would like to begin with saying a thank you to our co-sponsors, Civicus, FDH, OMCT in the framework of the Observatory for the Protection of Human Rights Defenders, NASRA, Human Rights Center Viasna, and Mother Nature Cambodia. As you can see here, we have some panelists with us that I will introduce shortly, and we will also have an intervention or panelists joining on Zoom. Since 1980, Right Livelihood has been awarding courageous people from around the world to stand up for a just, peaceful, and sustainable societies. The 194 laureates from 76 countries stand for equality and respect for human rights, and they also stand in solidarity with each other. Among them are several young activists who dedicate their life to achieve a better future for all. One of them is Rata Sun, from whom you will hear today. We also have others such as Mohsen Hassan and Natalia Satsunkevich, also seated right next to me, who work closely with youth groups and who, I believe, understand that these are key towards achieving a more democratic, just, equitable and sustainable future for all. While civic space is shrinking all over the world, young activists face unique challenges. In many regions, cultural beliefs lead to intergenerational hostility and negative discourse towards young people, both in media, where you have age-blaming and age-shaming, and also with youth groups that have a stronger media presence, which makes them more exposed to online attacks. We also have special challenges faced by young people and youth groups connected more to specific legal challenges. This could be age requirements to participate or age requirements connected to creating an organization or restricting funding linked to their status. Yet we have young activists all over the world that show us that they can be at the forefront of social change, often with very creative techniques and outstanding crowd mobilization skills. And while these young activists are key to guaranteeing the future, today's world remains very badly equipped to adequately respond to the challenges. First and foremost, because they're not adequately considered. So we're very pleased that the upcoming report of Ms. Mary Lawler, the Special Rapporteur on the situation for human rights defenders, who will also be part of a panel, focus on this very situation. The focus of this event today is to explore specific challenges that young activists face all over the world. Ahead of the 55th session of Human Rights Council, we also want to reflect on the role that the United Nations, non-governmental organizations, and other states should play in better protecting young activists and encourage the defense of human rights from a young age. But without further ado, I will hand the word over to Natalia from the Human Rights Center Viasna. You are a member of Viasna, and together with its founder, Ales Bialyatsky, you received the the Right Livelihood Award in 2020. And you received it for the resolute struggle for the realization of democracy and human rights in Belarus. And for almost 30 years, Vyasna has been at the forefront of promoting human rights and democracy, providing legal assistance to political prisoners, election monitoring, and documentation of human rights abuses. Following the unfair 2020 election, numerous Belarusians took to the street to demand democracy, but they were met with unprecedented repression. Since then, civic space has become virtually non-existent in the country, and any form of activism is met with persecution. Belarus currently counts 1,420 political prisoners, if my notes are correct, including many young activists. Natalia, in a context such as Belarus, what role can young people play in promoting democracy and human rights? And also, how does these young people or activists support each other or stand together in an environment and that is so repressive? And also, if you could tell us a bit about how the government tried to dissuade young people from approaching human rights in the first place. The floor is yours.
Sure, thank you so much for invitation and organizing this event. I want to welcome everyone. Nice to see you. Thank you for joining. My name is Natalia. As it was told, I was born and raised up in Belarus, the best country in the world, I think. I'm 35 years old, but I recognize myself as a young activist. I started my activism only 9 years ago. And that is rather typical for Belarus. People are trained not to be active in Belarus because it's not on the interests of the regime, political regime. And I'm a part of the greatest organization in the world, Human Rights Center Vyasna. Vyasna in Belarusian, that means spring. And my organization was founded almost 28 years ago in spring, where mass protests in Belarus took place and a lot of people were arrested. And my colleagues started to do lists of arrested people and try to help them. So we continue to do it all these 28 years. Unfortunately, during the whole story of Vyasna organization, we faced with repressions. Today, 5 members of my organization are in prison, including Nobel Peace Prize winner Ales Bialiatski. And during his imprisonment, he faces inhuman condition and ill treatment, and he suffers a lot and he can't speak loud. So in many cases, my colleagues and I, we are the voice of Ales Bialiatski and other political prisoners in Belarus. I want to share that my personal story started, and almost all my activism is connected with human rights. I came through summer school on human rights and started to be a volunteer doing civil control when we observed the work of courts in Belarus, peaceful assemblies, and also elections, as it was mentioned. And I found this very interesting and a lot of power. I realized that I have this power to monitor and to control the government. This is obviously the aim of civil society in each country. Then also I faced with some repressions. That was a search in my apartment. My mom was questioned by police. There were some unpleasant articles in pro-government media on my own. And for 3 years, I live not in Belarus. I can't go back because of criminal persecution. I can rarely see my relatives when they can come out. And some of my friends are repressed, my colleagues are in prison. But nevertheless, I always think that this decision to become a human rights activist, human rights defender, to join Vyasna was one of the best decisions in life, to be an activist, because all these things are happening, but I have so many, I got so many close friends, brave people, I worked with them. I know, I don't know, Ales Bieliacki and others. I'm so inspired by them. But the most important thing I think is about my story and activism, that I always feel right. I feel that I'm doing right things. I'm staying on right position, and I know that I'm doing this world better. At the same time, some other people are not on this side, and I see this by international solidarity, international respect, by people who come to hear about my story. So I think that this feeling of being right and doing really right things in life is the best that gives you being an activist. So I really want, as you see, to inspire people to be an activist, to find time to share with other people, and also to check. I always call people, especially those who live in democratic societies, to check your rights. Is it all time okay? Are your politicians doing what you want, not what they want? Are all your rights respected? Because human rights is not something very stable and like grounded. Yeah, it's always changing, and you have always to check what's going. Because looking at situation in different societies and countries, you can see how situation can turn in a year or two. So I really ask you to do it. And also, I always call people to express solidarity because it supports a lot other activists, and at the same time, it supports you. This Friday, when I knew that Russian politician Alexei Navalny died in prison in Russia, I felt so sad, but I found the information that would be a peaceful assembly in the center of Geneva, organized with Russian diaspora. And I came there, and there were a lot of people, and we all could share our sadness and angry, and it came smaller, but at the same time, when you share happiness and support, it comes bigger. So being with other people helps to lower the level of sadness and to raise the level of happiness. Sometimes it's difficult to cooperate with other people, to discuss something to common, but I really think that it's the only way we can do in our life and also in activism. So thank you so much.
I think it's so inspiring to hear both when you say that the feeling of doing the right thing, how empowering that is, and also when you feel and when you stand in solidarity with others. We are quickly jumping over to another continent, and more precisely, we're moving to Cambodia, where Mother Nature Cambodia champions human rights and democracy while working to preserve the country's environment. The youth-led NGO received the 2023 Right Livelihood Award, and the motivation was for their fearless and engaging activism to preserve Cambodia's natural environment in the context of highly restrictive democratic space. Rather, Mother Nature uses innovative techniques, such as videos that I know go viral many times, and you also work on training young Cambodians across the country. However, this success that you've had and the exposure that you have been matched with very harsh reprisals from the Cambodian government. And you are facing charges such as plotting or insulting the king. Could you share with us what makes Mother Nature Cambodia strong? What's the strength of your organization? And then secondly, how being young or being in a youth movement has been used by the government to further attempt to attempt further reprisals against you. And lastly, I wonder if you can also talk about what effect these reprisals have on the rest of the movement.
Thank Jenny for the question, and thank Right Livelihood for organizing this kinds of event. Thank everyone in the room and everyone in the Zoom for joining us and listen our story. Yes, the thing that make Mother Nature Cambodia strength is that we use the technical and creativity idea to impose our video, to post our to do on the online campaign and the street along the street campaign. So we use our video and the campaign that we use, we have to think about the technical and creativity idea to get more involved from the young people, from the people, especially for the young activists to join us with our campaign. The second is that we work closely with the local community who get the best affected by the project, that kind of project such as the hydropower dam, send export to Singapore and Taiwan. And we managed to stop sand mining to export to Singapore by working with the local community and the people around and the people in Cambodia. And also we work closely, and because of this, our activity, our group more viral because of we need to stop the hydropower dam. That's why Mother Nature Cambodia, now we are standing here. And the special thing is that even since 2015 until now, our 11 member of Mother Nature Cambodia has been in jail. And 6 of us now still have the charges against us from the court. And those charges are insulting the king and plotting against the government. It's just like sometimes the government said that we are the CIA member. So, okay. And yes, even we are faced to be in jail for 10 years, but our activists, especially for young, still stand for fighting for the environment. And the second question is that, yes, when they arrest us, they use the reason that we are young. Because you are young, you have no experience in life. You don't have a good education because we are studying in the university still. And because you are don't have the critical thinking, so that's why it's easy to get cheated by the foreigner. It's just that's why they call us CIA member. So it's a funny reason and the awful reason that the government try to use that reason against us. But the truth is that because they are afraid of the young power, because they are afraid of our power, especially for the young power, that we are the change maker in the world. We are still staying here. We don't need any benefit from our activism. So that's why they call us you are young. That's why you got hit by the foreigner. It's something you awful reason to charge us and use the court system to against us. And why we are still yes, because of the reprisal and sending us to jail, it's got a lot of effect to our work, but it's a positive reflection. Most people in Cambodia, they join more about social issues. Even the online campaign, the street campaign, they share, they mention, and they join and they express what they are feeling on those kind of things. Most young people in Cambodia, especially from the university, they join us more and more. Since we released from jail, maybe the government think that they send us to jail for 10 months, some people for 14 months, some people for 5 months, and we face to be in jail. But the young people, they still join us. They don't afraid because we are standing in the right position. We are the change maker to make the better life, and we all deserve to live in the better life. Also, the people think that to be the activist is not just only for their nation, but to be for the world, to make a better world. And because of we are standing in the right position to make the justice, to make anything, while the government who use the court system to against us stay in the wrong position, destroy their nature, destroy their people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I find it so interesting and also encouraging to hear what you say as well about the repressive measures and the effect it can have, almost to strengthen the conviction and the dedication of the activists. And I hear that one important aspect that both you and Natalia has brought up is the solidarity and the strength in the collective approach and understanding the value and the strength of groups and of movements. And I think this is an aspect that Ms. Mohsen Hassan, sitting next to me, and our next panelist, champions. You also received the Right Livelihood Award in 2016, and it was awarded for asserting the equality and rights of women in circumstances where they're subject to ongoing violence, abuse, and discrimination. And in the aftermath of the 2011 Egyptian revolution, Mohsen emerged as a very powerful voice through the organization that you co-founded, Nasra for Feminist Studies. And one of your aims was to build an Egyptian feminist movement. Nasra's work has since then expanded and now focused on the broader MENA region. And in 2021, you co-created Doria Feminist Fund, which aims to provide access to more and better funding for the new generation of feminist groups across the region. Mohsen, I want to ask you first with Nasra and then with Doria. Your efforts has been focused on creating feminist movements across the MENA region and as you said, empowering young feminist groups. Could you tell us a bit more about the specific barriers that young feminists and feminism in the region face, and how you work with a collective approach to help breaking barriers, and how to best nurture such approaches?
Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for inviting me in this inspiring panel and with those inspiring people. As you see, I'm not young, but I can bring something to this panel, but I'm not young. And I think also when I was young by age, I wasn't that young person. I don't know, yeah, I didn't have this young creativity and other things. But when I have been thinking and spending all these days with amazing, courageous Right Livelihood laureates, I have been thinking about how not only being a young activist, but also being a young woman activist from countries not only from the global south, but also in countries which people think that fighting securitization and militarization is only by the hands of the power, and the power most of the time are men, fully empowered and old, because this is the stereotype about thinking how we can fight securitization or militarization and other things. And being a woman in all of these contexts is something so problematic all the time, and has all these barriers from the private and the public, and all of them are affecting us. And from a region like ours, which have lots of stereotypes about us, generally as a region, and less understanding for us or giving us spaces or timing to share our narratives. Mostly women activists have been in more pressure than others, because, and especially if they are young, I'm always telling, and this is one of the perspectives we in Nasra, and also in the beginning of Doria and other things, how we can define young. we always think that young is not only about age, especially in countries and regions which doesn't have public sphere. So I remember I wasn't also young within the revolution. I was over 30. People named me young. But I remember that we have been working with older women by age in different governorates in Egypt and in different regions, but at the same time, they were younger than us and younger than those who led the revolution and have these things because they don't have resources. So I think young also about resources, accessibility, and acceptance. And seeing what's happening in our region now, being young or feminist or being a woman, being in these spheres, and especially as young people, we can see that this stigma of working on gender issues have been not only increased, but also it began to have its consequences all the time. So we have many countries in this region have been targeted, the people who are working on gender issues. And as example, Iraq now, it's not allowed to name any of your activity as something relating to gender in different other countries with targeting with women and younger generation, because also younger generation may be, and we had this talk today in the Office of Right Livelihood, that this is also about the third wave feminist and expressing your feminism in more non-traditional ways. Has been those groups and people have been targeted by their gender, but also on their sexualities and other things by state and non-state actors. We have been seeing radical groups in Lebanon, as example, have been attacking different places, feminist places or gender places, because they are not acceptable and they relate this gender thing. Also, I think while we see it also in Syria, we see it on Yemen. So now we have one of the youngest activists in Yemen who's almost 19 years old, is targeted, and she has the penalty against her by the Houthis based also on sexuality and on personal values and how they see women and how women have to be in the public sphere. Also, I think it's really important in our region when we see how cultural barriers are implemented on women activists, especially for the young, because also there is a stereotype that the younger generation in this region, because we had all these wars, we are in a region which has almost 8 wars and conflicts. It's really complicated that the younger generation will be more conservative and more closed. So thinking about how those younger generations have been in the public sphere or have been targeted, and also using gender issues as weapons against them in the wars, on the conflict. I know many of my friends, Syrian women human rights defenders and younger people who still, until now, they couldn't say that they have ever been in the jail of Bashar al-Assad, because there is this stereotype about almost all women who have been in the prison, she has been raped. I know many of my friends who their families or political groups or human rights groups have been evacuated them out of the country, not because they are afraid of their safety and security, no, because they have been in this prison or have been in one of these problems, and they don't want to stigmatize themselves with them. So also, I think thinking about young activism is also about thinking about the tools they are using and seeing how the campaigns and the targeting of those people who are using social media and others in Egypt. We have many young women who have been using TikTok, and now they are in prison for more than 10 years as traffickers, not even in prostitution case, but just because they have been using TikTok, and also how the different movements, like how Me Too movement in our region have been shaped in online spaces like Instagram and others, and see how those women, and especially the younger from them, have been targeted by the mainstream, what we can say all the time, the old guards of the society, by state or non-state actors. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mohsen. I think it's very interesting also how you bring up the power dimension and the stereotypes and the pressure of additional pressure women and young people face, and especially in connection with gender and feminism, and the worry that you express for the development at the moment. I think at the international level, we can see that there's numerous countries that recognize this importance of youth empowerment, but in practice, as been shown very clearly by our panels here, it's clear that young activists face a lot of repression and heavy reprisals, but also clear, I think, from your examples, how they stand together and continue a relentless fight for a better future. And I will turn to our last speaker of today before we open up for questions. And that is someone who's bringing these very issues now to the 55th session of the UN Human Rights Council that will begin next week. Ms. Mary Lawler dedicated her entire career to human rights. She founded Frontline Defenders in 2001 with the goal of providing support for defenders at risk. And she's the UN Special Rapporteur of Human Rights Defenders, and as such plays a fundamental role in ensuring a better implementation of the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders worldwide. She will present a report to the UN Human Rights Council, this time that captures some of the challenges that children and youth human rights defenders face, especially in those engaging with climate and global environmental decision-making processes. And this seeks to inform the Council of both best practices regarding the protection and also allowing for more visibility on this important issue. And just double checking that we have all the, yes. So then I would like to ask Ms. Lawler, does what you've heard expressed here from the panel match with the findings that you see in your report and the panel discussions that you've held? And what would be the key differences that you identify when it comes to youth groups' approaches, and perhaps also the key challenges they face? Do you see any difference there? And lastly, I would also like to ask you what you see is needed on an international level to improve the civic space for young people. And I will remember to mute us. Have I done that correctly?
Hello, everybody. I can't turn on the camera for some reason. It says the host has stopped it.
Let's see, camera and
But I
sound.
can talk anyway. We don't need the camera if there's a problem.
Let's see.
Still to see, she can turn on here. You come
Seamless.
Ooh, sorry.
Is it muted? Yeah, good.
I think let's see, it should work better now.
Right, can you tell her to try so we see?
No, it says you can't start your video because the host has stopped it. Shall I just present the audio?
Yes, yeah. We'll try to put the video on.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. First of all, I want to say how happy I am to be here, and sorry I did miss some of it because I just came back from Berlin this morning. But as you said, I am presenting the report to the Human Rights Council on youth and young human rights defenders and children who are human rights defenders. This arose out of a series of hearings I had last year. Now it says to start. Okay, so it arose out of a series of hearings that I had last year for the first 6 months with young people and children, and then in June a group of 30 young people under 32 and 10 children with their guardians went to Vienna and we had a conference there. And anyway, as a result of all that, I thought it would be a good idea to do my report to the council. So when you ask about key differences, through the research and things that we've done, I mean, young people face the same challenges as all other human rights defenders, and they often use the same protests, the same approaches as other human rights defenders, like strategic litigation, trial observation, campaigns, and protests. But where they differ is they're very creative and they have novel tools and methods. And one of the really good things is the extremely clever use of social media and digital tools for their purposes. We're used to seeing student activism, you know, in protest with handwritten signs and shouting messages, and that's still a fixture. But now the organization and the campaigning on social media enables a much broader and wider reach. And we saw in both the Me Too campaign and the Black Lives Matter campaign. So I think with young people, they generally, it's fair to say that they have a tendency to avoid the classic rigid structures of formally recognized organizations, and they carry out action through loosely organized or unorganized grassroots organizations. And that is that definitely, like, definitely knew from the time I was young, and again, the decentralized grassroots nature is a defining characteristic of young defenders activism. We also see direct action, and we saw this with Greta Thunberg and the Fridays for Future, and how, you know, she started by herself in front of the Swedish Parliament in August 2018. And then 7 months later, there was a global strike on the 15th of March, 2019, and there were 1 million strikers in 2,200 strikes organized in 125 countries. So it was really extraordinary. Now, we find that when we turn to the creativity of youth campaigners, just to give you an example, in the Lebanon, a woman dressed as a bride covered in bloodstained bandages stood in front of the Parliament of Lebanon while a committee discussed the abolition of Article 522, which was a law allowing men to avoid punishment for rape if they married their victim. And the campaigners used a variety of tactics in the following months to highlight the abhorrence of the law. And they had a flash mob, they had a pop-up prison containing girls in wedding dresses in the middle of the city, and with the slogan, "White dresses don't cover the rape." And they amplified their voices on social media with a supporting campaign, and it reached 20.8 million views on social media. So the Lebanese public was rightly disgusted, and it made it impossible for the policy members to then uphold this law. And then following that campaign success, we saw Tunisia and Jordan they amended similar laws, which shows the power of, I suppose, a well-executed and media-friendly campaign that has an innovative look to it. The other thing young people do is, I think, really well is they organize across movements. They don't stay in little sort of bubbles. Often their activism, as with other human rights defenders, is triggered by personal experience of discrimination or violence or human rights violations, but also arises as a need to respond when they see injustice. So the activism unfolds at all levels. But then if we turn to the challenges, exclusion from formal decision making is very difficult. And they face significant challenges online, of course, as well, including propaganda, cyberbullying, doxing, defamation. There are no proper spaces. There are spaces, but a lack of sufficient spaces to systematically involve youth and children who are human rights defenders. And they often find themselves isolated from their families as well. So it is, and then the whole thing about ageism. One of the things we heard the most of, and touched on the bit I heard today, is that ageism is a frequent barrier to youth and child activism. Young defenders feel they're not being heard, they're not being taken seriously, and their views and inputs aren't being taken into account. And even when their participation in public and political decision-making has been increased, it's usually a tokenistic box-ticking exercise. So then when they face repressive tactics, I think the younger you are, the more it impacts you, from what we've heard, which makes sense. We heard earlier on about lack of access to national and international protection mechanisms. And another thing that came across in the hearings were unwarranted academic sanctions, both in school and in university. And, we know that social media can be used in a very effective way, but it can also be used, as I said, in a very negative way. So what to do? If you want me to suggest some recommendations, there'll be a lot of recommendations in the report, but some of the ones that I'd like to highlight is, you need laws and policies. For everything you need policies and laws to enhance child and youth human rights defenders' protection at national level. And youth and child human rights defenders have to be explicitly referred to in model draft laws on human rights defenders. And we were very happy that the youth and child human rights defenders were included in the resolution at the General Assembly. It was something we sought, along with a lot of other people. And then, there should be a move to strengthen digital protection and security with regard to online human rights violations, and to capacity building in digital security for those young people who aren't as tech savvy as some of the others in terms of protecting their security online. And then a thing that came up a lot was because of lack of resources, financial resources, and particularly pro bono legal resources, services for children and youth human rights defenders who have been affected by legal challenges or have cases against them, or they need proper legal support. So we need proper pro bono legal services. And then the UN has a role to play as well, because they themselves have to create specific policies to systematically involve child and youth human rights defenders in United Nations decision-making processes. And they have to make the mechanisms more accessible and more child-friendly and responsive to the specific needs of youth and children who are human rights defenders. And there should be institutional and quantifiable markers developed to ensure the inclusion of and data collection on child and youth human rights defenders. And like here, we should have panels where young human rights defenders and children who are human rights defenders are given the platform. And that, you know, and this should happen in global forums as well. And OHCHR forums themselves should create special systematically special forums for children and youth human rights defenders, including in their regional offices. And again, as I said, you know, the laws and the policies at national level and should be relevant to child and youth human rights defenders, and they should be available in a child-friendly, accessible version. And I'm hoping that the report in March will also have an accessible youth and child-friendly version. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we deserve an applaud for that as well. I found it very interesting to hear the results from the panels or the discussions that you had, and also perhaps specifically what you talked about in the last part of your speech with the remedies or what can be done to combat this or to change this. And especially when you talked about the role that the UN has in making the mechanisms more responsive and child-friendly. And so I really look forward to hearing more as your report is presented, and perhaps even now on exactly what that would mean and how it would look, and even from states in the policies, like what they can do with this. So super interesting. I think we will be moving on to the question and answer now, and we will start with one intervention from our co-sponsors, Civicus Youth. And I mute myself, right? Don't want to have that sound again.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. Am I audible? Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all of these amazing presentations, everything regarding youth engagement, everything regarding the struggles that young people face every single day on field. It's one more example that if this is not on the table, it's on the menu. And this is not probably the first or last panel talking about the importance of youth, but it's really important to really think why we are talking and why is it so important to talk about youth across all of these problematics. And most of you have said it already. We are in the center of everything that's going on in many global issues. First responders were quick to adapt, but we also operate and engage where governments and international organizations mostly cannot. We are current leaders, but sometimes are seen as victims that need support. And even in many cases, youth is seen as the perpetrator and that needs to be stopped from being in the front lines on both sides. So it's a reality that demands us to shift the perspective on how the world is relating to youth. And the rejection of institutional participation is the first symptom, and we're living it. I do want to share a couple of reflections from recent work that we have done in Civicus with civil society organizations, informal youth-led groups from around the global South. I will share the information with you, but we have been following these movements and realized that what is motivating them, it's the sense of community that creates around a certain issue. A lot of movements generate this ecosystem in which the start of the work, it's either a personal struggle, a positive experience, or historical legacy. We have seen tactics being used such as capacity building, artivism and cultural expression, networking and coalition building, cross-movement collaboration. And all of these examples, such as what the panelists mentioned, give us a lot of hope in the way that the young people are engaging with the systems and able to challenge it. But young people face challenges themselves in terms of resources, sustainability, social norm values, gender norms, power imbalances, security risk, mental health, many others. This last one being really key in the sense of being part of the conflict, being affected by it, but at the same time finding solutions for it. So thinking of what do we do, where do we start from here? I would say that it's really important to make a call for young people to be disruptive but participatory. Fitting in existing structures of power is tough, but as we human beings tend to adapt to our surroundings, we need to stop mimicking what we criticize and going through prepared speeches or what we should say or do. And actually, when the current structures need us to be there as young people, they need us also to change them and break the barriers for hopefully future generations to feel more represented. And that is our greatest challenge. So that is a reflection I wanted to share based on many of the things that have been discussed today. And I'm really excited to keep on following up to this discussion. Thank you so much.
There, is it working now? Brilliant. So thank you very much for the observation. We will quickly move on to take one question I think we have time for. So looking at the audience here, if we have any questions from our online audience. Yes, please go ahead.
I was actually wondering, and I'm asking this to the panelists especially, you said that there is a lot of importance given to the digital space to reach young activists, which I totally agree with, of course. But I was wondering how important today is for young activists to have also physical space for activism, like to find physical space to exercise your activities and your activism every day, and what are the challenges in that today?
The question was, we've talked about digital space, but how important is it for youth activists to have also physical space? And it was directed to the entire panel. I think we have like time for a short answer. So Do you want to start, Rata?
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
Thank you for your question. It's really, I think that during the COVID, we all realized how online is great, but how it can turn boring and non-productive. So definitely online, offline, in-person meetings, that's a big part of the society, and for young people it's especially important to meet. And we know, of course, that in many cases there is a lack of resources. Yeah, they do not have an office for young initiative and so on. So this should be supported, definitely.
Okay, for the digital, it's really great for us. Both we can connect it via online to build more network on online by using the digital. But it's really important for the physical like space for us. But it's like the same as digital space, we have like the limited support by we don't have the office, we don't have anything. So it is hard for us to connect it all around the world to meet up with each other. So it is really important, and maybe the time different because like we need to like travel a lot to come to find the best place where we can meet and where we can learn from each other. So it's a little bit hard to connect it with the physical space with the young activists around the world. So digital one is really important, but the digital is not only important, but sometimes it has like a negative also, because like online is not always good. It's always bad for us. So that's why we always need to update about the digital security. Yes.
And Mohsen, any,
Yeah, I think it's
you're gonna have to run to the microphone.
Yeah, I think it's important to see the contextualization of why the online is important, especially for this generation. It is in different places, there is a shrinking spaces. So people went, and the younger generation went to the online because most of the time they don't have a physical thing. So most of the time in the activism that they went into it because they don't have. And also there is a big factor happened years ago, which is the COVID-19. So made the online as the only public sphere, not the alternative. In addition to how activists and human rights defenders and women rights defenders have been facing problems on the rights of movement based on being an activist, young or on gender basis. So we have been doing many documentations around young women who have been travel banned, not based on something legal, but because the security man thought that she looks so young and from simple class, so she couldn't travel. Yes. Or in countries that which had people who are under a certain age to have the acceptance for traveling from their parents or husbands or other things. It complicates also the right of movement. So I think why the social media or the online, because there is not only shrinking space in this world, it's closure of spaces.
I just want to add one more point, is that the young activists, we are volunteer to work on that field. So we don't have the pay job, like no one pays for us. So it's volunteer, that's why it have like the both negative and positive. The positive and the strength of young activists is that we volunteer to do that thing, no one pays us. That's why no one can stop our activity on that kind of field. But the bad, like in the negative point, is that we don't have like a lot of money to travel or to make the physical space to meet each other. That is, but we still find a good way to do on the digital one, to meet up and to advocate and develop, like to ask for or to order the government to do the right thing for our better future.
Thank you very much for that. I will also hand over to Mary Lola, if you want to add something on the physical space.
Sorry, I agree with what everyone said, and my own view is it's a mixture of both. You know, being able to mobilize online and campaign and amplify everything you're doing online is really a very important part of visibility and recognition of whatever it is you're fighting for. But I do think young people particularly, I mean, it's in the nature of young people to want to meet, to want to socialize, to want to see each other. And I'm just as you're speaking there, I'm wondering about, you know, whether or not there could be some sort of, in hostile environments, there could be some sort of dummy groups, you know, where people come together as, say, for example, a knitting club or a bowling, you know, some sort of activity that, because I've seen this done in lots of countries where defenders mask what they are doing by pretending they are involved in some sort of activity. The reason I said knitting there was I know women in Congo, in Eastern Congo, you know, they meet up in others' houses to campaign, but they pretend that they are members of a knitting club. And in I can't remember what country I came across, where women were, it was a patriarchal society, so women were not allowed, you know, do pretty much anything in the human rights line. But what they were able to do was to meet in each other's houses for, I can't remember what it was they were saying they were doing, but in reality, they were actually strategizing and planning and, you know, but it gave, I suppose, it gave concreteness to what was going on individually online and whatever. But I mean, it's in the nature of humans to want to see each other. So I would definitely advocate for, even if you're not able to do much and the space is not there, find a creative way around it in which you can meet at least and strategize together, because it also builds solidarity and efficiency, and apart from that, and effectiveness, but also apart from that, it's your network of human rights defenders around you are your best security through their solidarity.
Did it work now? Perfect. So thank you very much for that. That will have to be our last intervention for today. I think that in this past hour, we managed to cover quite a broad range of topics within youth participation, although I feel we could have dedicated a much longer time, half a day or a day, because we're barely scratching the surface. But one of the things that I take with me is the importance of protection and accountability mechanisms to support young human rights defenders. And also, I think something that we said in the beginning of the session of the solidarity and the importance of both having the solidarity and support from other movements, but also from other parts of the world for this important work. That especially your panelists here have been doing. So to conclude the event, I would just like to thank you all again for being here and sharing your experiences, and also like to thank our co-sponsors for the support, and of course you in the audience, both in the room and online, for participating. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.